Keffals. Saying the name alone is a fucking tragedy because to anyone who knows anything about anything is aware of the intense mortification that comes with associating with or even mentioning her name, and the past week has not been good for her ever declining reputation. While Keffals has had a very extensive history being an overall deplorable individual, being a danger to minors and other people in the community alike, this video will not be covering topics such as Cowboy Ranch, her time supplying minors with bootleg hormone treatments, or her previous online escapades. What I really want to go over is just how terrible Keffals, among other people, have been in regards to the whole Vosh situation that we talked about last week. As we all know, Keffals was amongst one of the first people to defend Vosh when all of this broke down, and her excuse was essentially that Vosh was a good person, and that she was not defending him for the sake of bolstering her standing within the community, but little do we know that this is actually exactly what she was doing, as much as she pretends that this is not the case at all. In fact, I feel like this is the opening to possibly one of the biggest shutdowns in her career, as she started disavowing Ethan for his own concerns in regards to Vosh's hard drive. What she wasn't accounting for is the fact that Ethan would then start condemning her for defending someone who was, as we mentioned, not a good person by any means, and overall was proven to be a creep. Some people may say that Vosh was taken out of context in the clips that are circulating the internet, but as I've said in the past, regardless of the context, this is one of those situations that even within context, his statements are not much better at all, and we will touch on how this relates to Keffals a little bit later. The tweet that really led to all of this is her asking for Ethan to be more sympathetic towards someone in the community, because Ethan himself has gone through something similar, and I say similar in air quotes because these two events are not similar in the slightest. Her entire argument is that when Ethan was experiencing community backlash in the past in regards to the Hassan Leftovers breakup, that he should know what it's like to be unfairly criticized by onlookers of bad faith drama. A quid pro quo exchange, if you will. However, these two situations cannot be compared in the slightest because Vosh was caught with what is essentially illustrated lolicon, which to most normal people is not defendable by any means. And let me just add one thing real quick. Just because you are within the same community and sometimes argue the same topics, views, and ideas, it does not mean that someone is expected to stretch their arm out for you. This is what led to Keffals being one of the main players of this in the first place. But Keffals does not care about what is normal and what is morally correct at all, as she goes on to make several posts calling Ethan out for questioning her standing, and then finds a way to make the situation about herself and her identity in a situation where she was simply called out for associating with an individual with questionable habits and arguments. And Keffals had possibly one of the worst responses she could have ever made. Instead of understanding that she was dying on the wrong hill, instead of understanding that she was backing the wrong horse in this discussion, she decides to make herself the victim in the situation and makes a narrative that only an insane and deranged person could ever hope to make. Thus, she made this tweet right here. I hope that Ethan is happy. Labeling me and my community that is disproportionately made up of trans people all pedophiles for simply asking him to do better research has made all of the most insane anti-LGBT freaks come out of the woodworks to mock, harass, and dehumanize us. Oh, and she also made this tweet right here. It shouldn't be acceptable for people who are supposedly leftist or progressive to pedo-jacket trans people. We are already the target of that by the right. Incredibly disappointing to see from people who should know better. These are just two examples of Keffals using her identity and identity politics overall to try to admonish Ethan for something that he simply didn't do, and even surfaced a term, pedo-jacket, which nobody has really heard of until now, to make it seem as if she and her community were being victimized by Ethan, which is something that within context Ethan didn't intend at all. He simply wanted to call Keffals, Tipster, and other defenders of lolicon, which were extremely prevalent during this discussion, he just wanted to call them out for their deranged behavior. He did even say that if they are labeled as pedo so often that they may as well wear the jacket, which honestly I wholeheartedly agree with. There were some insane people in my comment section in my previous video and Twitter telling me that consuming this type of pornography is more than fine, and that even minors have the capacity of consuming pornography with more positives than negatives, which could be further from the truth if they knew anything about neuroplasticity and child development. Keffals, however, did not see this as an incentive to stop and back down from lolly hill, as Ethan states. Instead, she actually went on to make a 5-hour stream where she then started taking Ethan out of context in an attempt to prove her point that what? Vosh has been taken out of context?
If you believe that this is a situation where no one could possibly make that mistake, you should also show that outrage to Ethan, but it's a cartoon Klein.
I just want to say I thought she's hot. That's it. You didn't? She was like a lady. She's not a little girl. She's like a full-blown 17. Fuck. But it's a cartoon. It's a
I understand the point she's trying to make. Don't insinuate anything without doing your due diligence as to not paint someone the wrong way, because there might be more to the story than what we see on the surface. I get it, but why go to these extents to be extremely hypocritical just to get your get back on Ethan? Again, Vosh contextually made the claims he made for the sake of a pseudo-intellectual contrarian take, for the sake of being contrarian, which he has taken the position and side of multiple times. Sure, Vosh may not be a pedophile, but his morals and person can really be questioned because of how frequently he put himself in a position to be purposefully contrarian. In fact, this entire situation was really just Ethan denouncing his behavior. Any normal person wouldn't want to associate with someone that willingly admits they use the contents of his folder for literally any reason he may have, let alone someone that actually stores images like that on their personal computer. But Keffals just had to insert herself in this entire situation and make it all about herself, as she typically does, as well as her politics and her identity. She even made this video where she tries to criticize Ethan and his behavior, and again smears him in the worst way possible. But the worst part of this video is literally the beginning frame.
Yahoo!
Yes, this video is unironically just sympathy baiting. Woe is me, look at how awful Ethan is being, and look at how he could potentially harm Vosh and my community by falsely accusing them of something they are not, even though that actually didn't happen, and I just wanted to be recognized and get sympathy now that I have one of the biggest YouTube streamers paying attention to me. She is literally crying wolf in one of the worst ways possible, and virtue signals in one of the most twisted ways possible in an attempt to not just fire back at Ethan, but also people like Keemstar. It is clear that she is taking this situation entirely for clout, even though she claims that she no longer wanted to be involved in drama and just wanted to focus on creator horror content for her second channel in a tweet she made a few weeks ago. Ironically, that did not last long at all. It's almost as she is obsessed with being the victim in every possible situation she injects herself into. Oh wait, she does. As a matter of fact, she begins the entire video doing just that. Ironically, this video is also titled Vosh and the Hypocrisy of Ethan Klein, and it's ironic because throughout this entire video, she is also being an extreme hypocrite herself. Literally in the first 2 minutes, she once again makes herself the victim, stating that Ethan implied that both her and Tipster were pedophiles. Unfortunately for Keffals, that is clearly not the claim. He simply criticized her for having a bad opinion, which is possible. He simply criticized the fact that you could have simply disavowed Vosh and what he did and his opinions. I hope you understand. It is you who are assuming that these labels will automatically apply to you. And unfortunately, if you want these labels or if you don't want these labels applying to you, maybe you shouldn't be defending someone who has debated these topics multiple times, frequently, and then defend the context for it as well.
Following Ethan Klein's first stream about Vosh, Ethan would end up bringing up both me and Tipster on his stream for criticizing his coverage of all of this.
I hate to say it, but two people that we are somewhat friendly on the show, Tipster and Keffals, have sacrificed themselves to Lolly Hill.
Not only did Ethan imply both of us are pedophiles, but any of the thousands of people who were defending Vosh were also pedophiles. It was really gross and a completely irresponsible use of his platform. Ethan responded to people upset over being falsely accused of being pedophiles by mocking the word pedo-jacketing.
Also, what the fuck is pedo-jacketing? Why do you guys have such weird-ass expressions for everything? And how often are you being accused of being a pedo that you need a nickname for it? If the jacket fits, you must not acquit. And then here, this is, again, not a real photograph. Cam sent this. And this is not real. He is not actually wearing this. But is this a pedo jacket? I don't know.
But then came up with the stupidest nickname imaginable in order to call all of his detractors pedophiles.
Of course, I'm not going to cover this entire video. That itself could be a video on its own. What I want to move into next, though, is how Keffals completely disavowed and moved on from Vosh after her 30 seconds of fame, which I bet she is now regretting, were finally up, and I'll get into that in a second. So here are some Discord screenshots, and they're honestly very telling. Look at how funny this actually is. So these are messages from Keffal herself. I've changed my position on everything, honestly. And then somebody else says, this is the correct take. I'm very sorry you're going through all this bullshit again. And then she says, it's his fault. He's so fucking careless because he didn't consider how many communities are close to his. He hurt me and a lot of people by literally being a fucking weirdo. Go watch porn on your phone, retard. Jerking off at your work computer? Fuck Vosh. He deserves far more criticism for all of this. I don't think he's a pedophile, but he is so goddamn reckless. I am not sleeping. I have had panic attacks over this, and defending him has resulted in all of the 2022 Kiwi Farms misinfo resurfacing, and because of Vosh, I just burned the last bridge I had to a mainstream creator. So as we can see, this was in fact all a grift, all in an attempt to try to appear like a virtuoso under the spotlight of Ethan's watchful eye, an attempt to get more mainstream coverage, only for her victim complex to absolutely make her appear like a big creator Ethan was slandering her, which didn't work out well at all. And regardless of the consequences of her own actions, it is still somehow Vash's fault that she burned a bridge with Ethan. It definitely can't be the result of her actions that caused this. She is still the victim of Vash in this situation. Surely Vash forced her to type and say everything she said. Surely Vash had a gun against her head and told her exactly what to say and when to say it. That is exactly what happened. Anyways, the only reason she is now backing down is because this complex she has now brought the unwanted attention of significantly larger players in the field, and information surfacing that she thought she had once left in the past. This is just a desperate attempt for her to appear as if she is in fact not a problematic individual. So now people like Munohar are doing big investigations on her, more specifically on her $100,000 campaign. But it is clear that the Catboy Ranch information and the distribution of bathtub contaminated HRT will now come to light as well. This is all just her desperate attempt for her to not be labeled as a creepy weirdo. And just a little spoiler for anyone who's watching, she definitely is. And Munohar is about to drop a bombshell with his upcoming project. So all in all, Keffals Cried Wolf became the self-insert victim in a drama that had nothing to do with her or her politics, made it about her community, her identity, her politics, and ultimately got name-dropped in the midst of when she was the most controversially relevant. She brought this on herself, and honestly, it's been a long time coming. Thanks for watching, everyone. Love you all. Later.